All right, let's move to old business. District 86 withdrawal from Lassie.
So I did follow up with the board, on the board's request. I did talk to some of our feeder districts. They're split. Some are, I think 94 just recently passed that they're going to allow 86 to withdraw. I think in talking with Mark, he was going to advise 95 to go against that. I did talk to some of the other districts not in our actual feeder pattern. Once again, split. Some are going to vote no. Some said their boards are under the impression if they don't want to be in the co-op, why keep them in against their will? The one thing I think this board needs to understand is that even if we vote no and they don't get a majority, there is an alternative way through the state waiver process that they can still waive out of the co-op. So I will have this in the board packet on June 12th with my recommendation, but I did want to make clear to you all that I have another LADC meeting tomorrow where I'll get more input, but for the most part, from the 6 or 8 superintendents that I spoke with, it was split 4 and 4. Some, if they don't want to be here, we'll vote them, why keep them? And then other ones were saying, well, we don't want to set the precedent that you could just leave. But there is a state waiver process in there that even if this they were not able to get a majority, they would probably still be able to waive out of the co-op anyways. So most likely my recommendation will be that we should vote no, because it will directly impact us financially. But I do want you to be prepared that most likely they'll still be able to waive out.
Any questions on this? All right, next item is school board meeting formats. So it's 2 parts. First of all, we'll talk about the agenda for the meeting agenda and visitors' comments expectations. We have a draft in front of us that would state that the meeting agenda and visitors' comments expectation would be posted at the back of the meeting by the attendance sheets. Visitors' comments expectations or process, board policy 2:230, states that you would fill out the index card, place in the visitors' comments box your name, town, and the topic. During visitors' comments segment, Board of Education president will call up each request. All visitors' comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If a person would like additional time to address the board, such a request could be submitted in writing before the meeting to the superintendent. If there's a second visitor's comment on the agenda at the end of the meeting, the board president and vice president, in his or her absence, shall poll the audience for any comments. These visitors' comments will follow the same time limit, 3 minutes, as stated above. What's your thoughts on this?
I put together a draft just to have something in front of us. Is thinking about this, like even in an event like tonight, we don't have a communications officer that could sit in the back and make sure that visitors, as they walked in, filled out an index card. So I don't know if we'd totally be able to manage this, but if you looked at, I also included in there the policy that we already have. I think it's 2:30, and it does state that you identify oneself, be brief, and that you're limited to 3 minutes. So I think if we just began to follow and maybe communicate it, or have something that the board president could read before each section of visitor comments, that you'll only have 3 minutes, and that the secretary of the board, Ms. Nardi, is keeping the clock. If you need additional time, you can send something in writing for a request. I mean, maybe we just need to do a better job of informing and updating the community on our policy, and then upholding the policy at the meeting. I don't know. I put the draft together so you could see some type of idea. This is something we used at a previous district where they used the cards, but they had a communications officer who then collected the cards, read the cards to the board or introduced the board, and then the speaker would come up and he kept the clock. I mean, we don't have those types of things in place here necessarily. So I'm wondering if it's easier for us to just inform and update on a more regular basis the community, and make it clear that we're only going to allow 3 minutes, and that the board president does have time to shorten public comments in order to speed up the meeting. I mean, there is a lot of good stuff covered already in the policy, but I'm not sure if people are aware of the policy, and obviously we haven't been enforcing the policy for quite some time.
Yeah, this is one case where Matt's got more power than the rest of us, Matt.
Oh my
you just
God,
need to
please.
maybe you need to use a little bit more of that, huh?
I'll let you know right now, as chairman of the zoning board of appeals, when we have meetings where there's a lot of comments coming in and people making, we try to do the same type of format, limiting them, saying, and it's worked. But those meetings are, you know, maybe 10 or 20% of my meetings where you're gonna have that many people speak, so.
I would agree with Dr. Skinkis in the sense that we don't normally have a lot of, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of community members in the audience, and when we do, it's a heated topic. And I think when we can read that, and I think we can read the situation when we know it's going to be a heated topic. I think we just, as a board or as a president, needs to remind them ahead of time that you're going to be cut off at 3 minutes, only because the number of people want to talk. To have a card system, it's going to be more limiting than it is to encourage them to talk, and I'd rather encourage people to talk and get their voice out. So I would just remind the board that we know when there's going to be a lot of people wanting to talk. We just need to remind them ahead of time, nip it in the bud ahead of time to tell them, look, it's going to have to be 3 minutes because we want a lot of people to talk and get their voice out. And if they want to if they want to hand in their speech to the board, feel free to give it to us and we'll read it in its entirety. But realize, get to the main points you need to accomplish in the 3 minutes. You need to accomplish it.
Any other comments?
I agree. We don't want to stifle any input from the community at all. And you know, some of those meetings where there were a lot of people's comments that anyone else, and then, oh, someone raises their hand, and you know, other places have you line up, and I don't want to see them have to line up to speak, or at least commit that they're going to do it. I think the card, in a general sense, might not be a good idea, but if there's going to be 50 people here, and 25 of them want to talk, perhaps we should, after the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, say those people who want to talk might need to fill out the card or sign in. I mean, you know,
or encourage them to gather their thoughts so that they can get their points out in 3 minutes succinctly.
Yeah,
I think is more important.
It's a balancing act of.
I really think we should follow the policy. I don't think it stifles people's ability to talk. They have 2 opportunities. Mike had suggested 5 minutes. I don't care if it's 5 minutes, but you know, again, and I think you have a little problem if you limited some meetings and not others. So as you said, saying 3, it's 3 right now. All you're asked to do is kind of be succinct in what you have to present, or if you want to have a longer period of time, let us know in advance and we'll put you on the agenda.
That's right.
The other thing that I would suggest is, I talked to Kevin about this, you know, I reference a couple of the other policies that people probably aren't aware of that address, because a lot of people who don't come here often think when they make a comment, we're going to get involved in the conversation or respond, and we rarely do, which is considered a good practice. But, you know, if you look at policy 8110, there's a uniform grievance procedure. Anybody in the community, the district, anybody can put something in writing and say, I have this issue, I want somebody to look at it. So we have my suggestion would be, maybe, I have a problem with cards, I can see not doing cards, Mary Ann can keep track of it, but instead of just putting visitors' comments, whatever the guidelines are going to be, put it right in the agenda there.
That's what I just wrote.
I'm sorry, did you say that?
I just wrote the same thing, Mary Ann. Maybe we could highlight 3 key points from there that you'll have 3 minutes. Please be succinct. And if you want more, please submit a written inquiry. You know, we could put a couple things on our general agenda.
And I would even go as far as if, you know, look at, I don't know if we want to give them a copy. We have 810, you know, we have 830, 8110, that if they want more than just coming and talking publicly, there's other ability to bring your grievance or your concern up. And I really, for the same reason, I hope we do that with people, so that, I don't know what your timeline is, Kevin, but if you get members of the community who call, you know, have them follow the policy like we expect everybody to do, and it manages how we handle the input too.
Yeah, when I looked at 810, I mean, to me, 8110 is that it's kind of like what we're already doing. It says that they can come and bring it to any office in the district, and the district can determine who will be the designee at the building level. It also makes clear at the back of the policy, I think, what it says, you're not guaranteed a hearing before the board. So I mean, I think there are some things in place. I think mostly with our visitor comments and some of that is we just need to enforce the policy and make sure the community's informed and updated.
Okay,
Yes, so in your sentence, as you said, just put it in the agenda and just make reference to this policy. Say,
Right.
per Board of Education policy 2:230. And then if anybody question it, it's been our policy all along.
Yeah, I think Matt could just have something to read briefly before
Yeah.
he opens the floor.
gotcha. All right, any other comments on this? All right, so we're not going to do the cards. We'll come back and put that in the agenda about being 3 minutes, being succinct. Get your thoughts together, and then, Mary Ann, you're going to have to get like a timer or something like that so we can be a word friend. Now, the second part of this for meeting efficiency is a wise man with no hair gave me this book called Coming to Order, Guide to Successful School Board Meetings. You know, building a little bit off of what the vision is that Laura wanted to bring up, you know, I kept on looking at the previous board meetings we had, and, you know, people came up to me, and, oh my God, you know, what's really happened with it? We have a lot of stuff we have to do. The budget is just the first part of it. We have a contract coming up. We have to figure out what we're going to do financially for the future, strategically in the future. We have to figure out strategically what we're going to do with our budgets, with our educational programs, everything else. And the problem is, you know, reading this book and everything else, we need to be able to find a way to efficiently run these meetings so that at midnight we're not discussing a major issue that we need to make a decision on, or we're not working with that. Additionally, when I'm looking at this, we have to be able to, one of the ways to efficiently run a meeting is to break off between governance and management, and being able to realize that the board is there to govern and the superintendent and administration are there to manage, but based on what the board's policy and governance policies are doing from that. So given all that, and because we have to really, a board to me needs to start strategically focusing. We got all the key players here to be able to do it. But I think that what I'm asking is that the 6 of you get together and look at and discuss how we're doing our meetings. Discuss how we can more efficiently do that. Discuss how we can start bringing the focus into vision, strategic planning, future focus. What are we going to do with that? But being able to make sure that we're following that the everyday, not managing it, but that we're everyday following policy and stuff. So what I'm saying is, I'm going to step away a little bit, but what I'm asking you, 6 people to do, is to get together to be able to figure out how can we efficiently run the board meetings to be able to address the vision that you're talking about, strategic initiatives, future planning, strategic focus, because without that, we're just living day by day, just working from there. We got to be able to, we got to be able to see the challenges that we're going to be facing for the future, and from those being able to address action plans that are going to be able to have that. Because the main goal of this board is to make sure that, 1, we are providing a great education for these students. And this is not a real good situation, both financially, governmental-wise, so we got a big challenge before us. So what I'm saying is, I'd like to have the 6 of you get together to figure out how we can make these meetings more efficient. So we're not staying till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, or staying till midnight. That tells me right now that where's our focus and where we're going to be at from that. The cow, I think it helps to address it a little bit. I think that our regular board meetings are dropping down a little bit, but I think we need to have you guys look at it and figure out what you want to do with it. So that's why I'm throwing this out to you right now, to be able to come back with some recommendations on what you want, how can we efficiently run this that would allow us time and focus that we can strategically look at our future and being able to address those future issues coming up from the front. And that's what the second part of this item on the agenda was, that we didn't get to talk about last time because we were running a little bit late. So, any thoughts? Or
Was part of this calendar, I think the calendar's excellent. Kevin, is this what you had put together?
Yeah, I did that for my mid-year, just to show you it's a general operation. Mary Ann and I are constantly moving things on or off.
I think it's really excellent.
And then on the bottom is I put that little gray box. This might not be shown on your copy, but the purpose of the bottom portion is to kind of remind the board and to get us thinking that on a monthly basis, what do we need to know for preparing for contract negotiations as well as financial planning for the district?
This is good.
So that's why I put on there, like, you know, we have bond counsel coming in, and these obviously can be moved if the majority of the board want to change it. But we would have, you know, William Blair in August, and then we would do a contract workshop or something of that nature in September. And then I think later in January, I have down, you know, as we get closer to starting negotiations, having someone come in and discuss insurance plans with us and benefit plans. So that bottom box is that we try to maybe put something in there every other month or move some things around. As you notice, we did PMA projections. We're going to try in either June or July to get you a contract review tool. So if you wanted to start in your spare time reading on that.
So what does everybody think about, before going to this calendar, what does everybody think about us moving, having you guys go out and try to efficiently try to make these, you know?
Well, how are we going to do that? A special meeting of
Yeah,
6
what-
of
I
us?
think that you're going to
You
have to.
call a meeting.
We just can't go.
No,
to
no,
it.
no, I'm not, what I'm saying right now is you're going to have to do this at another meeting.
Well, I did talk with IASB. They're willing to do another retreat. They are willing to join with the reps that we had last time to do it combined.
So it can be a close.
So is this that, so Matt, is this the idea that the six of us get together, set the ground rules on how to make the meeting move forward? You as president, we give them to you, and so you're gonna, if we're going off target, you're gonna be the one that's gonna come back and rein us in based on the ground rules we told you that we agreed to abide by?
I would say that directionally that's where I'd like to go.
I suggest we wait and see if we have a retreat first, because we tried making ground rules for ourselves last year, and they don't seem to have worked, and I want to see how this new set of ground rules would work and how we would manage the meetings.
Well, here's my comment is, if you ignore it, the key thing right now, to me as a board, frustration is here, also through staff and everybody else, that we need to be able to start looking forward in the future and how we're going to be able to address stuff. And not being in catch-up mode to say, okay, how are we going to do this, what are we going to do that? Being able to strategically look going forward to see how we're going to handle this. Right now, Howie threw us the biggest thing in the world, saying, okay, guess what? There's a very good chance that this pension is coming down here. How are you going to handle that? How are we going to handle, you know what I mean? Like Kevin said, we've made as many cuts as we can. How are we going to do this for bringing revenue in? What are the ideas coming up from that? So it's stuff like that we need to be able to talk about.
Well, then I think basically we have to have it on an agenda, like every committee of the whole, you know, vision of the Board of Education. Maybe we need to put this in. I think there's two issues here. One is maybe a way to get through the meetings we have now more efficiently. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to really give us a heck of a lot more time, to be honest with you. I think we just got a lot of stuff that we're dealing with here. This school was in bad shape. It was in bad shape organizationally. And I think everyone agrees to that. And this whole year, and even the 2 years you guys were on by yourselves, I mean, a lot of effort was put into place to make this place run more efficient. So I don't think there's a magic wand here that's going to make this go away. There are some efficiencies, maybe the way we run it, but I think if we're going to address these things, it has to be on the agenda. And you could put it in as a vision thing. And I agree with you, we need to start talking about that more than just the details. But the details, you can criticize Tim like saying he's, you know, micromanaging, but I mean, look, there wasn't any controls here. I mean, we have to fix it. And you know, after this year, with Kevin's leadership, I think we are fixing it, and it's going to get better. So I think the thing to do is do both of those things. Let's make it more efficient and have something on the agenda every meeting or every month that we talk about this vision thing like Laura's talked about.
I can make sure I did tell the IASB rep that I think we need to focus more on agenda efficiency and meeting operation, that even after a year of being together, I mean, we do average about 4 hours for our board meetings. So
Times two.
yeah, times two meetings a month, and then I'm meeting with sometimes 2, 3, 4 councils.
Yeah.
In between that, you know, there's some things that we need to just figure out, and part of it could be, hey, you have a first-year superintendent, and there were a lot of things that needed to be addressed, you know, management-wise, so maybe some of that will lighten up, but Tim might not be far off that maybe in the retreat, you know, that and we have to air out some things, and the IASB rep talked about, you know, getting to some specific agreements and signing a covenant as a board of some things we're going to uphold to. And then also sign something, you know, I told him it needs to be a little more focused, a little more direct, if, you know, and, you know, that we have some big challenges facing us that we can't spend another year working on some of these other things. So maybe that could be something we take on over this summer, where the schedules get a little lighter.
Well, I think the calendar, Kevin, that you put together will help hugely, because the top part seems to be what, you know, we would cover in our regular meetings. You know, everybody would know ahead of time. For most of us, this is the first time we saw this. We asked a lot of questions. The part you have on the bottom, the finance negotiations and William Blair, that might be items, and it's up to the board, that we address during the committee of the whole meetings, because then the work part up on top. So if you just look in September, you know, we have recognition of schools, the hearing budget, adopt the budget, all that's out of the way, and then that committee of the whole can really look at the finance and negotiations and kind of those things.
Sure.
But having that laid out ahead of time, we know what to expect going in. And then when I was on the ISAB, Illinois Associated School Board site, they talked about whole boards, education for the whole board, and the recommendation was a self-evaluation, which I think is a little different than a retreat. It's a little shorter, but they have a tool, and they recommend doing your self-evaluation like every other year, like every 2 years, where you can kind of evaluate yourself as a board member, as a whole board, and then you talk about that evaluation. That might also be an option.
We did that 2 years ago, right after you left.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
never happened with this board, and so
No.
rather than going into retreat, we would evaluate ourselves as a whole board, and then we'd look at our evaluation and see where we, from a tool, you know, an instrument that the association has developed.
Right.
All right, so given a talk, and it'll be, if, with the retreat, we'll put that as one of the items to talk about. All right, let's go to.
Could we, I had asked last time, would this be the appropriate time? Could we consider putting on the agenda next time? I don't know what everybody's schedules are, but if the committee of the whole meeting could be on Thursday instead of Tuesday?
We'll take that item after we get done with new business. All right, so let's do this district financial timeline.
That's just a calendar that I already pretty much explained. So what I'm laying out for you there is William Blair would be next in August to update us on some of our bond options and some of that. And then I would think either in September or October we do a contract workshop. If there's something as we develop, as we move along, if we think there's something that needs to be added on to the bottom of this, we can add it on. As I stated, I think Mary Ann and I are in a good place with this, but with the board, what sometimes I think the board needs to understand is that things do change when we're playing school. So there might come a time where I have it on here in October and it might need to be brought in September. So anytime Mary Ann and I have noticed that we're moving it on an agenda or pushing it back on the agenda, the second thing I have her do is update this calendar and send me the newest copy. I think what we will do is once we move to board book in July, is that we will have this operational calendar on there, so when you sign in, not only will your policy manual be on there, but this calendar will be on there, so when Mary Ann makes an update, whenever you log into board book, you always have the most up-to-date copy in front of you on board book. And there will be a board book presentation in June. They'll show you this. This way it'll be like a one-stop shopping for the board members and the community in regards to our financials, our bills, our agendas, our minutes, our policies will all be in one site. And that's why you see more members today using their laptops and stuff like that. But, so, okay?
All right.
Can I ask one question, Kevin? This is very good. I compared it to the IASB, and it seems like there's a couple items on it that we have to look at, you know, as opposed to like signing in that agreement. Like, I think I mentioned one to you, notify superintendent if they're not going to renew their contract as required at a certain time. So if we make a couple suggestions, you okay with considering adding them?
Yeah, and I remember, this is, just as long as I think we focus this calendar on the board's operation.
Right.
If it, you know, that's why like the budget timeline's on there, the levy timeline, in the year of my contract expiring, we should put that, we need to know by this day. I would agree, yes.
So you wouldn't expect to put something like
3
for
years
every
out.
year and say only, you know, the year?
We were
out?
trying to keep it more general to where you know, like, hey, every September, you gotta approve the budget. Every October, we should review the levy. We were trying to do it more that way, so that it wasn't.
Let me ask another one then. What about like considering a referendum, say, there's certain timelines?
Yeah, absolutely. That
Is
I
that
would.
something you would put on?
I would put on that bottom.
When
Yeah.
it's time? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Because there's that calendar, if you noticed on like the IASB one, on an election year, there's some different things Mary Ann has to do.
Right.
Like in
Okay.
regards to meeting allotment for 2 years and stuff like that.
See that.
So she's gonna constantly be updating it on an annual basis.
Ideally, I think this is a great basis. Unfortunately, I'm still seeing a lot of managerial issues taking up primarily of this budget, where when maybe after the retreat, we can primarily make these up as the goals, financial goals, the educational goals, the curriculum goals, whatever, and highlight those.
Sure.
And put managerials as smaller.
I agree. Any other questions on the operational calendar?
And some of that too, Gary, is just stuff that we make sure that everybody on my team knows. You need board approval, and it's got to be approved by October, so you need to start to work back.
Understood, and it's part of the new board members also to understand their timings too, and I
Right.
appreciate that. But
Okay.
ultimately, if we're going to get to that visionary
Make this lighter.
and goals, you know, making sure the goals are achieved, we need to make the goals bigger picture. Okay.
And I'm not opposed, as Tim mentioned, if a board were to consider to go for referendum, I'm not saying we are or not, it's helpful to know in what month those that conversation should be introduced. Whether or not this board uses it or not, but those like protocols could be put in there in italics or whatever. And then as board members, we would get a rhythm of when things should take place if they were to take place.
So if you look at the calendar, the current one that you got, I don't care, I guess we could discuss this at the retreat, but if 4 of the board members or a board member wanted, on one of those months under finance and negotiations, we can bring in a consultant to speak to the board publicly on what should be, what's a sufficient timeline to propose, advertise, campaign for a referendum. You know, I mean, we could have a 12-month calendar, so you could say, hey, well, let's bring somebody in next fall or next spring to start talking to us. So if we want to run in the future, or if we...
Well, I think, like, you brought PMA in, I thought that opened up our eyes a lot, you know what I mean, from where it was in November.
I think William Blair puts on presentations
Yes.
on how to run a referendum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've
And
done
their, and their last series was how to run a referendum in a bad economy or something like
Yeah.
that.
We're
It was.
using, and I apologize for this because I wasn't around when the bonds were issued, but we're using William Blair only because they were part of the bond.
William Blair was who the previous board purchased the working cash bonds through, and Chapman and Cutler is the legal counsel in regards to the bonds.
And are you guys working closely with them and you got a good assessment of them, or should the board look for another financial?
We've met with her twice, Elizabeth Hennessy. We've had, I've been fairly positive.
Yeah, and she's, I send her financial information every month. She sends back updates on a projection model. It's not as detailed as what PMA did today, but but they do a projection for us every month.
So, I mean,
They've done a good job.
if we decided to not use PMA or to go to a different, I mean, a lot of times your bond council will do a lot of the projections PMA did. I brought in PMA because I felt a third party because I know there was some history with our bond council. So,
Well, I think, to expand on what Gary said, who else can we use? Why is it her?
Well,
Aren't they
Pete-
under contract right now, Tim?
No,
Oh.
there's no contract.
Do we
Sorry.
pay them for the projections?
Nope.
PMA, for example, PMA has their, a bond division you can use, or, I mean, you can use.
Well, I'll tell you personally about Hennessy. I really wasn't impressed at all with their presentations at this last referendum thing, and I think it was very, actually harmful to the referendum. That's just my personal opinion. And I think you should look at other alternatives than her.
Well, I think what we could do is, when she presents in August, the board wants to say, hey, you know what, let's go out and find, I mean,
I'm okay with that.
I serve the board, so if you guys want me to do that, we can do that. I think we should maybe have her come one time and update us on what we're currently invested in and what we have going.
We're not even paying for it, right?
Correct.